What's going on, everyone? I'm Jaren, and today we are talking about The Flash. This is the latest and probably the final entry in the DCEU. Is directed by Andy Muschietti, the man behind Mama, and the two chapters of Stephen King's It adaptations, as well as the ensemble writers who were involved in movies like Birds of Prey, Dungeons and Dragons, and Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. In this story, Barry Allen uses his super speed to change the past, but his attempt to save his family creates a world without superheroes, forcing him to race for his life in order to save the future. Now, this was a film that DC fans were excited to see come to fruition even before Ezra Miller donned the Speedster's one piece back in 2017. Going through different rewrites, reshoots, different directors, different writers, production was hurtling through various challenges. Even after the film wrapped, the pandemic delayed its theatrical release by a few more years, and if that wasn't enough, Ezra Miller's real life criminal activity casted a big shadow over its publicity. Following with James Gunn, who planned to wipe the DCEU slate clean and start anew, which resulted into various versions of the film that would alter its future. Early reviews have been spewing over the internet for weeks. Even Tom Cruise and Stephen King saw early screenings for this, and they praised it. My knowledge of The Flash outside of the DCEU really stems from like the CW show with Grant Gustin, or even my all-time favorite animated rendition, The Flashpoint Paradox. After reading a few articles and seeing a few interviews, I know that they said that they were loosely taking a page out of adapting the Flashpoint Paradox, so I had to lower my expectations after seeing what they had planned, and after finally viewing the movie, I thought it was okay. Starting off with Ezra Miller, now I do have to admit he did a really good job in the film. At first, I was not welcome to the idea of having two Barry Allens in this story, only because the second Barry that shows up is an insufferable goofball. Miller does deserve some props for executing two distinctive performances that felt like two actors interacting with one another instead of one. Although I do have to admit, the dynamic between the two was a mixed bag for me. There was a lot of humor in the script that really landed with the crowd in my auditorium, as well as getting a few laughs out of my girlfriend and I. The other half really grazed at my nerves. Although I do think that all the silliness, especially with Barry 2, really balanced out our main Barry in order to become the more mature and grounded one, which ended up working out. I like how some of the earlier criticism from fans about Miller's take on The Flash was lightly addressed through the interactions of both Barrys, one including about how silly and how flailed out he is when he's running through the Speed Force, and then there's how obnoxiously loud and impulsive that he could be. Also, I kind of thought it was cool about how the Flash was able to showcase some brand new combat tricks as well as phasing through the walls. There's even a few pivotal and emotional scenes involving Barry 1 yelling at Barry 2 about how he takes life for granted because in this timeline his mother is still alive, where one Barry knew loss in order to become the hero he is, the other didn't know what loss is nor the responsibility he has with his superpowers. Not since 1992 has Michael Keaton returned to the role of Batman, aka Bruce Wayne, and he chewed up every moment he had on screen, and I think he absolutely stole the show. With that being said, I think it's best to tame your expectations with how involved he is, because this is still a Flash movie and not a Batman movie. Also, if you are multiverse fatigued, I think he does the very best at explaining the multiverse in layman terms using a bowl of pasta noodles. Although it's very obvious when it comes to a few stunt doubles behind the cowl rendered with some CG, this iteration of Batman has never been faster and even more badass. I mean, there's even a moment where Batman takes on a Kryptonian, takes him down, in fact, with the simplest ensemble of gadgets. It was bittersweet to see Ben Affleck return as the Snyder iteration of Batman and Bruce Wayne for two whole scenes. Although he was one of the better highlights of the DCEU, it was unfortunate that the ship has sailed on the role for him as an actor and a filmmaker. He is given one hell of a chase sequence, which was kind of weird to see the Dark Knight in broad daylight. And he also got one of the best speech moments to close out the cameo. I just wish we had the chance to see what Affleck's solo movie would have been like. Sasha Calle's Supergirl was one hell of a surprise. Again, tame your expectations with how involved she was, but she really made the character her own, and she was not afraid to give those darker yet vulnerable traits of being a heroic Kryptonian the way that Henry Cavill did with Kal-El. And I honestly did not care for her fight and Zod, because I just thought that bringing back the main villain from Man of Steel was just so tiring. Michael Shannon should have said no. I honestly would have preferred Lex Luthor in a metal suit to have shown up. Every article online has brought up of how terrible the VFX shots were, and after seeing it for myself, although it's blatantly obvious and rough, it did not turn off my viewing experience. I think that, especially with the baby scene and the Speed Force sequence, it was a stylistic choice by Andy Muschietti. In a way, it really adds a sense of campiness to it. I just wish he wasn't so quick to render things in CGI, and the It Chapter 1 and 2 movies really are proof of it. Significantly split into three acts. The first act started off strong with the classic Flash tropes to his motivations with changing past events in order to save his mother. I thought was very touching. I know that the film did not have time for a romance, but I think they squandered any sort of potential relationship with Barry and Iris West. Merging into the second act, I felt like they slapped a bookmark on Mrs. Allen and just pushed her off to the side in order to deal with Barry 2. Now, the script was able to break down the origins of how Barry becomes the Flash without completely submitting into the origin story structure. I thought that was pretty clever, and in a way they were able to develop Barry 2 properly. The third act was quite the spectacle, whether it was fan service or just wonderfully paced. I think the story was elevated by the screen additions of Batman, Supergirl, and a list of cameos that didn't necessarily feel like nostalgia bait for once. And I think that there was some creative and surprising choices that were made that really steered into a plot reveal that I wasn't necessarily fully on board for. The most heartbreaking peak of the movie would have completely won me over had they ended it there. Of course, when it comes to studio decisions, they just had to plug in a laugh at the very ending, which had all the nerds in my audience, including myself, roaring with laughter and disbelief. Overall, despite this movie's countless flaws, it was damn good entertaining through and through and never boring. I would have liked to see what this movie would have been like had they stuck closer to the original source material, or if they released the original footage, gone with the original plan, or even given us some of the other endings. Then we would have gotten hope for some sequels and upcoming projects that would have led after Zack Snyder's Justice League. But this is not necessarily the strongest swan song for the DCEU to go out on, but at least they went out swinging. Alright guys, that's all I got to say about that movie. You would not believe how difficult it was to just map this whole thing out and not talk about spoilers. But go check it out if you feel like it. In the meantime, I'm Jaren Agbanawag. Hope you guys are having a wonderful summer. Look forward to more reviews, and I will see you guys at the movies. Take care.